The views and opinions expressed by presenters and guests are their own and do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of Parasearch UK Radio or its affiliates and sponsors. Listener discretion is advised.
You're listening to Parasearch UK Radio, news, views and reviews from the world of the paranormal from across the UK and beyond. Find us on Facebook, Twitter and the World Wide Web, Parasearch UK Radio.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Parasearch UK Radio. My name is Kerry Greenaway, and I'm joined in the studio this evening by a co-host, my lovely Andy Mercer. Good evening, Andy.
Hello there. How are you doing tonight?
I'm doing absolutely fine. Now, we have a very, very special treat in store for you guys tonight because we've got a very special interview tonight on a subject that is really close to Andy's heart. Can you tell me what the subject is tonight, Andy?
I certainly can. It's an event that occurred in the Ural Mountains in 1959, where a group of hitchhikers, I always say hitchhikers, I should get that correct, ski hikers, which were holidaymakers essentially, but they were students travelling up north into the Ural Mountains, basically met a rather strange end. They were very experienced at what they were doing. They knew the terrain reasonably well, camped for the night, and unfortunately met their end, each one of them that particular night. So it's 1959 in Russia, but it's absolutely fascinated me for years since I first heard about it. It's become known as the Dyatlov Pass Incident, which is the name of the leader of the group, Igor Dyatlov. It was named after him. It was a particular small region in the North Ural Mountains, a little pass between two high peaks. And tonight we have with us a chap by the name of Keith McClosky, who's written 2 books on the topic, and I found them absolutely fascinating. I've listened to Keith talk about the topic on a number of occasions, and I really wanted to talk to Keith myself about it. So he's our guest for tonight, isn't he?
Yes, he is. Good evening, Keith. How are you?
Fine, thank you, Kerry. Thank you for inviting me on, and thank you for having me on, Andy.
Well, it's excellent to say. I really wanted to talk to you, so it's good to hear you.
Yeah, it's very, very good to hear you. Now, you've been researching this situation, this incident, for quite a long time, haven't you?
Yeah, I have for quite a few years now, and I made a couple of trips to Russia to, investigate at source, if you like, and meet people who were involved from that time with the incident. And I went up to the Dyatlov Pass the summer, not last summer, the summer before, just to see the place for myself, which was quite eye-opening.
And you've come across some really interesting information regarding this particular incident. You've looked at it in so many different angles. When I was looking at your work, you've covered so many different angles on this. You've literally left no stone unturned.
Well, I think one thing I try to avoid is to have a pet theory and then say, anything else that contradicts my pet theory to rubbish it or say, well, it's got to be this and it can't be anything else. Whenever I'm doing an interview, I often mention the story of somebody I met in Lithuania who was a survival expert. And as people who know this story, one of the first theories that comes up about it is that they were hit by an avalanche, a partial avalanche, and that's what caused some of the injuries, and they moved away from the tent down to the tree line to get away in case there was a further avalanche or movement of a slab of snow. Now, this survival expert, we were doing a bit of filming over there on the Dyatlov story, and he was absolutely adamant that it was, he said, not necessarily an avalanche, but it could have been the movement of a slab of snow, which can still cause quite a bit of damage. But no matter what you said to contradict that, anything that contradicted it, he wouldn't listen to it. And I think if you're going to get to the bottom of what happened to these hikers, you've got to keep an open mind. well, no, we will come on to it, but there's quite a few paranormal theories about this as well, and I do not discount any theory. My view is, if you can come to me with evidence, which is why I kept my website open to people to contact me, say, tell me what you think and back it up with a bit of evidence, or show me how you think the sequence of events went. And I think that's the only way you're going to do it. You cannot say, I've looked into this deeply, therefore my answer is the right one. Because, to be honest, at the moment, there isn't a right answer. Not only that, it could be that everybody looks at one theory alone, and it could be, for all we know, it could be a mixture of theories.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I agree.
I know, obviously, Keith, you had to do this on many occasions before, but you wouldn't mind just giving us a brief rundown of exactly what happened in terms of what we know about the lead-up, if you like, to whatever happened to them that night.
Yeah, well, as you were saying earlier on, Andy, there were ski. It's called ski tourism. That was the official name of it in those days in the Soviet Union, and it was very popular with students because it gave students a chance to get away and let their hair down. It's not something, say, that a bunch of students today would probably want to do, because it was a test of extreme physical fitness, apart from anything else, in temperatures that went down to minus 40 in they're on the edge of Siberia there, so it's not the sort of thing you think, well, we'll just throw a couple of tents in the back of a car and we'll drive up into the mountains. They need a lot more planning than that. But anyway, there was 10 students set out from Sverdlovsk, which is now Yekaterinburg, after the fall of the Soviet Union, or the breakup of the Soviet Union. And it was in 1959. They set out to go north into the northern Ural Mountains. Without going into over great detail, they changed trains at Serov, which is a town on the way up, and they got to the town of Ivdel, which is really the last piece of civilization before you then go into the Ural Mountains. And from there, they went to a woodcutter settlement, which was basically the last time anybody else ever saw them. And then they carried on to an abandoned geologist settlement, which was just basically a bunch of wooden huts. And one of the group there, Yuri Yudin, turned around to return because he was quite ill, and the date then that he turned around to go back was the 28th of January, 1959. So everything up to that point, we know what happened to them because we have an eyewitness from Yuri Yudin. Yes. I know there's diaries, I know there's photographs, but going a bit further down the road, we'll go into, there's theories that they've been doctored, etc., etc. But Yuri Yudin was there up to that last day when he turned around, so he can confirm that everything was what you would call, in inverted commas, normal. But he turned around and went back, and that was the last he ever saw of them. Saw of them alive, I should say. They continued, and on they continued to the base of a mountain called Kholat Syakhl, which in Soviet, that's actually a Mansy. The local tribe in the area is the Mansy, and it means don't go there. Sorry, not don't go there. What I'm about, it means dead mountain. Sorry, their actual destination was another mountain called Otorten, which was don't go there in the local Mansy language. But
you're going to love these names.
Yeah, I know. But the funny thing about it, though, is that the Soviets call them by their heights. Yeah. So that Kholat, dead mountain, Kholat Syakhl, and I'm not even sure I'm pronouncing it right because I don't speak Mansy. It means dead mountain. What it means is it's not a sinister warning. What it means is nothing grows on there, and it's no good for herding reindeer because there's no food for them. Don't go there at Mount Otorten. It's not another sinister warning. It's a difficult place to get to in winter. All the Mansy names mean something in relation to giving you guidance to the members of the tribe about the various geographical locations. A lot of people read something into it. It's like the Mountain of the Dead, which, where they've all died, etc., etc. But I can say that in Russia now, on my last trip there, many Russians who are well into the Dyatlov story, it's now being called the Mountain of the Nine, apparently. It's quite current usage in Russia now. As an allusion to the dead, the 9 dead skiers. So anyway, so on the night of the 1st and the night of the 1st and 2nd of February, they seemed to deviate from their route. They actually went up the mountain instead of more or less going around it, which when I was there, it seemed a far more logical route to follow, to just stick to the tree line, because it's fairly flat and level. There's reindeer paths, there's paths that the Mansy use, and it tends to follow the river that's there, the Auspia. So if you stick to that, it's a pretty easy run. But what they were doing, they were basically testing themselves, and it could be that Igor Dyatlov wanted to add an extra layer of difficulty, if you like, to the whole thing by taking them up the mountain and camping out on the mountainside itself that night. Nobody knows for sure, but it seemed a bit of a peculiar deviation to make. But that's one explanation for it, as to what they were doing up there, when they could have taken a bit of an easier route down at the base of the mountain. Anyway, that's what they did. When they didn't return, they were due back. They were due to send a telegram back about the 11th or 12th from a village called Vizhai, which they passed through on the way up before they went to the woodcutters' settlement. They were meant to get back to Vizhai and send a telegram around the 12th of February. At this point, they'd already been dead for nearly 2 weeks. They'd been dead for 12 days. So there wasn't an immediate kind of, well, where the hell are they? And, people weren't over-worried just because they didn't hear. But as the days started to pass, people were starting to get worried, the families in particular. And I'll come on to that later on, because there's a theory as to why nothing was done very quickly. So eventually the parents were going to the university every day. The tourist club, they were getting quite agitated as to why nobody was doing anything. So eventually search parties did set out to go up and start looking for them. And they found the tent itself on the 26th of February. So this is almost 4 weeks after they were dead, after they died. But no sign of the bodies. And the tent itself had collapsed and there was slash marks down one side of it, where it looked as if they'd all slashed their way out of the tent. Some of the search party did make extra tears to get into the tent. But you see, at that point, nobody expected to find them dead. They thought that something had happened, or there'd been some kind of emergency, that they just left the tent, and they expected to find them all further down in the forest alive. But the first bodies were found the next day. The first 2 bodies were found down by the tree line, by a cedar tree. They were almost naked. They'd had they just had their underwear on, and they'd also had burn marks to their bodies, to their arms and their feet, where they'd tried to start a fire, and the frostbite was so bad that they were actually putting their hands into the fire.
It's hard to imagine, isn't it, for the situation to be that bad.
It's like I say, the temperature, the official temperature is minus 27 that night. But if you think there's a strong wind up there, which the 10 days I was up there, that wind was there all the time. So that must take it down to about minus 40, minus 50, that wind chill. So we've had winter here There was one morning I went, I think it was -6, and it was absolutely, I had all my clothes on. It was absolutely, but could you imagine what it must be like to have your bare hands and trying to stick them into a fire, and your feet into the flames, and feeling nothing, because basically the frostbite was just attacking the whole body and killing them. It must have been absolutely horrendous. So anyway, they found the first 2 bodies, and then almost immediately they found a further 3. They found another 2 bodies, Igor Dyatlov and one of the 2 girls in the group, Zina, on the actual mountainside. And on the 5th of March, which was basically almost 2 weeks later, they found Rustam Slobodin's body in between the body of Zina and Igor Dyatlov, almost in a direct line. There was a couple of 100 yards between each one of them, and it's almost as if they were trying to make their way back to the tent. When you look at it, they're some distance away from where the first 2 bodies were found. The remaining 4 bodies weren't found for another 2 months when the snow started to melt. They tried to build a shelter, and it was when those 4 bodies were found that they found horrendous injuries on them. Basically described as car crash type injuries, especially to the other female in the group, and one of the oldest male in the group, Semyon Zolotarev. His ribs were completely crushed, and so were Luda's, the other female. She was found draped over a rock, but the thing is, she hadn't actually fallen on the rock because there would have been deep snow, but there was deep snow covering them, which is why they didn't find the bodies for nearly 2 months. And there was 2 other members of the group there. Basically, one of them had an injury behind his right ear, which again seems peculiar, but also various types of injuries, with the worst of them being to Zolotarev and to Luda Dubanina, the other female. Her nose had almost been flattened into her face as well, as if she'd been punched by a heavyweight boxer. So they're very strange injuries. So I don't know how you want to proceed, because that finding of the bodies, which was over the 3rd to the 5th of May, the whole case was closed down just a few weeks after that. So I don't know where you want to proceed.
Do you think it gives the impression that it was just, well, that's enough, we found them now, do we need to worry any further if it was closed down that soon afterwards?
What happened was that the autopsies were done on the first bodies, and these first bodies were basically deemed to have died of hypothermia. So you think, well, fair enough. You couldn't answer necessarily straight away why they'd left the tent, but obviously something made them leave the tent. They died of cold because it was basically, you're in Siberia. If you don't know, they didn't have enough clothing on. Some of them were in bare feet. So it's like the tent was left in an emergency. Okay, so you've got a big mystery there, but basically they've died of hypothermia. They weren't stabbed to death. Nobody killed them. Well, one of them, of the 2 bodies found by the tree, did have signs of foam around his mouth, grey foam, as if which apparently can be caused by somebody pressing on your chest.
Right.
It'd be that, again, there's theories over that somebody had possibly been interrogating him over something, and he was being held, and extreme pressure was put on his chest which would bring foam to your mouth. But it's but basically it was decided that they'd all died of the cold, whatever had happened. But then when you find the other 4 bodies in the snow shelter, a completely different set of circumstances. It's like you've got 5 who would have died what you would call a normal death from the cold, but then you've got these other 4 who are not all, 2 of them with extremely serious injuries, as if they'd been hit by a car, but no external marks on them. So then you think, well, how the hell have half of them died that way and this other half have died this way? It just doesn't make any sense. So, absolutely. And also, what explains car crash type injuries? Smashed ribs, and other injuries to the group. there was skull fractures and this sort of thing. People have tried to explain it by saying, well, where the snow shelter in was a ravine. And when I say a ravine, it wasn't 500 feet high or anything. Yeah. I mean, I've stood there, and it's a fairly gentle slope, and it would have been covered in thick snow. So the chances of all four of them falling into this ravine in thick snow and smashing themselves so hard that it's just not feasible, really. Absolutely. So there's no real explanation for those injuries, which is what comes to the autopsy. The final conclusion of the report after the autopsies, which says they died of an unknown compelling force. What does that mean?
Absolutely. I mean, obviously, just clear up very quickly for everybody listening, there were no signs of any vehicles nearby, so they hadn't literally been hit by a vehicle, so that can be definitely ruled out straight away. It was in the middle of nowhere, so there's no sense of it actually being hit by something. So you are left with the question, well, is it some kind of drop from a height or literally thrown? It is an absolute mystery, as you say. So what on earth could leave those kinds of injuries? As I say, if it was falling into the ravine, which I've seen the photographs, you're talking 20, 30 feet. How comes they all fell at the same time? And I know one particular girl's injuries are particularly graphic. I mean, we can talk about them. I mean, she had the base of her mouth removed and tongue removed.
Yeah, I was just going to come to that. Sorry,
sure.
That was the other thing. But it wasn't an injury as such, but it's one of the whole peculiarities of this story is that her tongue and the root of the tongue was described as missing.
Mm-hmm.
So she was where she was lying on the rock. There was in a stream, and the stream had. Obviously, it was frozen when they were there, but the ice had started, the snow and the ice had started melting. So there's one explanation that microorganisms had eaten away the tongue and the root, which is possible, but then that doesn't explain the other three that were also in the stream, but their tongues were okay. At least there was nothing in the autopsies about their tongues being missing. It just seems such a peculiar thing to say that the tongue was missing. And I was in touch with a pathologist who deals in cold weather deaths in Canada. Mm-hmm. And he said it was extremely peculiar because his view of what happened to that group of four was he says that he's been 30 years covering pathology in northern Canada, and he said he's dealt with a lot of deaths of people frozen to death. But he said where they've been left for a while, he says what tends to happen is you get much smaller animals that haven't been hibernating attacking the bodies. He would have expected to see something like that possibly I know mice hibernate, but he said some animals don't hibernate, and it would be a much smaller animal that may have been eating away at the flesh, not on the faces, and he would have expected it to have happened to the others as well. But there's no report of any of that. You could say, okay, well, that's Canada, this is Russia, but they're very similar. The climate and the wildlife, it's all very similar. They've got bears in the north there. They've got bears in the north in Siberia as well. But he said that was one thing that he thought was odd about it. He wouldn't have expected the tongue to have been eaten on its own or to have disappeared on its own. He'd have expected the flesh of the face to have gone first. And the same as it wouldn't have just affected one person. So it's a peculiarity.
Well, certainly I know also that, just mention a bit more about that little section, is that there was blood was found in her stomach, suggesting she may have been alive when it happened, as far as I've read, certainly.
Well, it does say that there was blood found in her stomach, so it implies that possibly the tongue had been removed with a knife or cut out or whatever. But I was also in touch with a surgeon who said to me that to remove somebody's tongue willingly is one of the most difficult things you can do. You have to sedate them, and tongue, various muscles have to be cut, and then the tongue has to be drawn out for you to actually cut it. So if you've got somebody who's unwilling, they know their tongue's going to be cut out, they're not just going to lie there and you to pull their tongue right out of their head unless they're being held completely immobile. Which, again, if you think about it, it's it was late at night. There was a virtual blizzard blowing. It was dark unless they had lamp. It's an almost impossible thing to do.
Absolutely.
If you're going to torture somebody like that, and why her? Well, one of the peculiar things about Luda, though, is she was the most outspoken of the group. If she always spoke her mind, and if she thought somebody was an idiot, she'd tell them to their face. And Yuri Yudin had said before he died that it's odd that she had her tongue missing, and yet she was the one that couldn't control her tongue.
That's rather unfortunate, hopefully only a coincidence, but it does make you wonder, like, oh, blimey, someone really did lose the plot there and took her tongue out. Oh, Lord.
That's the thing, because there are theories that they were attacked, and she may have thought, well, you lot, obviously it's a family program, you can't say you lot can go and reproduce somewhere else or whatever, and they took great umbrage and said, well, we're going to teach you a lesson. But to actually take her tongue out and cut it off, it's a very, well, not impossible, but a very, very difficult thing to do.
So imagine under those certain circumstances, you say no lighting, absolutely freezing temperatures. It would be, I mean, unless she was already knocked unconscious, sedated, but then that suggests they met somebody else. But from what I understand, there's no evidence to say they met anybody else at the time to have done this.
Well, the other thing is there's no footprints to back that story up. I've had people contact me on my email and say, you're an idiot because it's quite obvious that it was the Mansy that did it, or it was escaped prisoners, or it was special forces that did it. But the thing is, there was only 8 or 9 pairs of footprints that were counted by the search parties when they got there. So if there was 8, there was 9 of them. So if there was 8 or 9 footprints that they counted, where are the other footprints?
Yeah, exactly.
They had to have been escorted down if they were held at gunpoint. You'd expect for other footprints to be further out, guarding them or guiding them down to the tree line. So it doesn't really make a lot of sense.
Absolutely. Sorry, Kerry, you were going to say?
I was going to say, any of the injuries, I mean, I don't know about avalanches, just putting it out there. Could it have been caused by an avalanche?
That's the first theory. That, I mean, if you look at the story first, an avalanche is the first thing you think of because it's in the middle of winter. It's in the northern Ural Mountains. You think, well, there's a lot of snow there. Obviously, there might have been a mini avalanche, or even, as this survival expert I know said, a slab of snow, which is the top layer of the snow moving down and crushing some of them in the tent. The theory goes that they were in the tent, a slab of snow moved down and caused the crushing injuries to Luda and Zolotarev, who got the worst of the injuries. The snow had come down and crushed them while they were lying there in the tent. The rest of them had to slash their way out to get out and help them out. But the contradictions start then because when they looked at the footprints, there was they were all walking unaided. So if they'd had those terrible type of injuries, they'd have needed to have been carried down probably, or certainly helped down. And what they were saying is that all the footprints seemed to be people walking under their own steam. The injuries to Zolotarev and Dubinina were so bad that certainly they wouldn't have expected her to last for longer than 20 minutes because her chest was completely crushed in. And so was his. He was in a really bad way as well. They were all extremely fit, and he'd fought in the Second World War. He'd fought at Stalingrad, so he's quite a tough cookie. But even with all that, they haven't got anything on their feet. They're not dressed for the cold. So with serious injuries, your survival time is reduced even more. So, and it's highly unlikely. I don't know what it must be like to have a crushed chest, but I can't imagine I'd be able to walk more than a few feet with it, let alone walk down with a blizzard starting and walk down in the snow. I'd certainly be looking for somebody to help me. But that's the theory about the avalanche, and but as I say, you can almost contradict it straight away. But
was going to say the other big problem, of course, is when the tent was found, it was partially still standing. If it had been hit by an avalanche, even as slow, like it would be completely collapsed, wouldn't it?
It would have, it would have been flat. If there'd been a large slab, it would have probably gone right over it, but it hadn't. The excuse me, the tent poles at both ends were still standing, so it doesn't really follow. And the other thing about it is when I stood at that's the thing. A lot of people don't really know exactly where the tent was, but you can work it out more or less roughly. But if you look at it up on the ridge from where the tent was, approximately, you just think there's no way that snow would have built in that distance. It's hardly any. You can see it on my website. I stood where the tent roughly was, and I took a photo to the left, a photo straight above where the tent was, and a photo to the right. And there's hardly any slope there. There wouldn't have been enough room for an avalanche to build up. And the other thing is, one of the search parties, the leaders of one of the search parties had said that his experience in the northern Urals was that it was very rare to have avalanches because they're fairly gentle mountains and they're not steep. And the other thing is, where that ridge is, the wind, there's a constant wind blowing across it, which tends to lift all the snow near the top. It creates a kind of a swirling effect after it goes over the top of the ridge, and it lifts the snow that's there, so it's not very deep either.
Wow, that kind of answers that one, doesn't it, really? Yes. Thank you so much for that, because that is a really good overview. We're going to take a quick break, and then we're going to get a little bit more into all the different theories and mysteries that surround this particular case. So stay with us. We'll be right back.
Join Kerry Greenaway and Jay Lynch for the Parasearch UK radio show as they share their paranormal news, views and reviews from the UK and the USA, with the help of guests from both sides of the pond. Will they agree or agree to disagree? Find out every Thursday at 7 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Pacific, right here on Paramania Radio.
Hello, this is Kerry Ann. Please join me every Thursday at 9 p.m. on 7th Sanctum, only on Parasearch UK Radio.
Hello, join me, Paul Rook, every Tuesday at 9 p.m. for the Trident Paranormal Show, with interviews, news and reviews from this galaxy and beyond, only on Parasearch UK Radio.
Hey, Teresa.
What, Jay?
What are you doing Wednesdays at 9 p.m.?
I'm hosting Paranormal Hindsight.
Can I join you?
All right.
Looking forward to it every Wednesday night at 9 p.m. on Parasearch UK Radio.
You're listening to Parasearch UK Radio. News, views and reviews from the world of the paranormal from across the UK and beyond. Find us on Facebook, Twitter and the World Wide Web. Parasearch UK Radio.
Welcome back. Good evening. We are talking to Keith McClosky tonight regarding the Dyatlov Pass, and I'm here also with Andy Mercer. Now, before the break, we had a good overview of the whole situation, and I think you're all starting to get a general idea about how weird this case is. Now, I want to take Keith back to the actual point of the tent, because there's a lot of things surrounding the tent that don't add up, isn't there, Keith?
That's right, yeah. It's one of the things when the searchers found the tent, there was a flashlight on top of it. The tent had been covered with a sort of fairly thin layer of snow, but the flashlight wasn't. It just had a very light sprinkling. It's almost as if the flashlight had been laid on top of the... it was a Chinese-made one, but it looked as if somebody had just put it on top of the tent. And it was remarked on that it was strange that that wasn't covered with snow like everything else was. So then you come into another area that the scene had been set by other people. The death, as I say, you go into another area of theories that they died somewhere else, and that the scene at the tent, what that theory is saying is that they didn't die there. Sorry, not at the tent, they didn't die there anyway, but what they're saying is the whole scene of action, if you like, took place somewhere else, but the tent's been plonked there and made to look as if that's where it all happened, and that they ran away from it. But again, it's just another theory. But the actual tent itself, one of the oddities I found, which people are looking at the moment, is the fact that the slashes to the tent appear to have been made from the inside. Now, when the tent was taken back for examination to have it looked at properly, it was examined by a seamstress who had said that the cuts were made from the inside of the tent. And I did mention earlier, the tent had been cut again by some of the search party to make the holes bigger. They openly admitted it because they were trying to get inside to open it all up and see what was inside. So some of the cuts were made afterwards, if you like. But her view of the cuts that were made for supposedly the group to get out in a panic or in a hurry were made from the inside. So she deduced that they'd all been cut from the inside. But having said that, you think, well, it's a seamstress. She knows about cutting fabric, etc., etc. But really, what it called for is a forensic specialist to look at it, at the cuts. I doubt if she had, I don't know what the forensic facilities they had available in the Soviet Union in 1959, but I can't imagine it was CSI New Orleans or anything like that. But it's one of the things that were that I believe that the Yuri at the Dyatlov Foundation, I did mention it as I'd been contacted by somebody about it, and they were going to look at doing some tests on fabric from tents from that time to see if it could be cut and deduced, given to a forensic expert, to see if they could tell which side it had been cut from. I think that might be quite interesting.
Definitely. I mean, one thing obviously we've got to just clear up for people is that we're talking about tents in the 1950s, so there weren't zips at the front which you undo in a few seconds. There were buttons, like the duffel coat buttons, so it would take longer to do that than to cut the way out. So it clearly suggests something spooked them for them to decide to cut the way out rather than undo the buttons. One of the things that I've come across, I wanted to ask you particularly about, Keith, was the idea of once they had cut their way out, that they appeared to be walking away rather than running. I don't know if that means anything to you.
To me, that's the crux of the whole thing. If you're going to cut yourself out of a tent, why would you walk? Because it implies you're destroying your only place of safety to get out, and then you start walking away. It doesn't make any sense. If there was something that they were getting away from inside the tent, once you're outside, you think you're away from. There's been talk of some kind of poisoning inside the tent. Or from the stove, which isn't correct anyway, because they found it in the stowed position. It had been used, well, it hadn't been used, but it hadn't been. They're saying fumes from the stove. But even if you were doing that, once you're outside, well, you'd presumably try and clear the fumes out and get back, because, like I say, it's your only place of safety. It's the only cover you've got. But to destroy it and then get outside and then walk away just doesn't make any sense. And the other thing is, if there was let's for argument's sake say a group of individuals outside the tent that said we're going to kill you all or whatever, or fired a shot over the tent, and they were quite frightened of what was happening and they slashed their way out, you probably might have felt, well, let's make a run for it or whatever. So you wouldn't just walk casually away from it, which is what the footprints seem to say. And the thing is, if there had been other people outside it, they didn't follow them down because they were in their bed. The footprints only were of the group, not of anybody else. This is the trouble. Every time you go down a particular path, something contradicts it.
Mm-hmm. One of the just a thinking which I wanted to come on to a second as well, as we were talking briefly off air before, the idea that struck me was the idea of some kind of strange light anomaly that was outside the tent that was quite bright, that unnerved them to the point they thought there were going to be something to land on them or something was heading in their direction, cut their way out quickly to escape it and to discover that actually it was something in the sky further away. But then, for some reason, felt they wanted to get away from it still. Not necessarily run mad, but just wanted to get away from whatever that was. Because I know, as we were talking briefly before we started, there was a particular instance that you discovered in the early 2000s about strange light anomalies. I wonder if perhaps would that make any sense to you, that they thought they'd seeing something that was unnerving them, cut their way out because they were panicking, only to discover it wasn't as close by or wasn't what they thought, and then still decided to get away from it. Admittedly, of course, they didn't run, so it still has that problem, but does that kind of make any sense?
Well, it does. It does to me. I think I've mentioned in an interview once before, I went camping several years ago down in Devon, and we were on a campsite which it was all fairly quiet, and a bunch of yobs came in a car. They're all looted out of their heads, and the car headlights were on, and I actually thought they were going to run me over in my tent. I actually rushed out of the tent because I had the flaps were undone. But the car was, it must have been about 200 feet away. They were well away from me, but the headlights lit up the whole inside of the tent, and I actually thought they were going to run me over, but not, I mean, they were just steaming drunk, but they were driving around in the car, and the police were called eventually. But I literally thought the car was only a few feet away from the tent, and that I was going to be a dead man. But like I said, I jumped out, and if you like, the danger was a couple of 100 feet away from me. They were nowhere near me, and the car turned away. But the effect it had on me in the tent, though, I'll always remember it to this day. It was really frightening. But on the subject of the lights are a big part of this story, because from everything that's been said about this story, there was something going on in the night sky, because several witnesses had seen it. It was seen by people in Ivdel, which was 80 miles away, but there seems to be some kind of light phenomenon going on. I don't know, there's various theories about it. Military tests, rockets, there's talk of ball lightning. There is a theory on the ball lightning that coming down, and that's what caused them to go out of the tent. And the lightning was what was seen by people, but all the witnesses were a good 30 to 40 miles away. Mm-hmm. The work has been done on the negatives, which I'll put into my book, by somebody at the Dyatlov Foundation, which shows certain things in the negatives taken at night. Some of them are inexplicable. Some people say it's just damage to the negatives, but some of the things are repeated. They can't tell whose cameras the negatives are from. One of them has got Zolotarev, so we know that Zolotarev had a camera, because he was found with a camera around his neck when he had all the crushed-in ribs. Yeah. So part of the belief is that he was outside the tent taking photographs of whatever was happening in the night sky. They could have been military flares as part of a military exercise. But again, nobody knows. That's part of the problem with that. Just because something's happening in the night sky doesn't imply that that's what happened to them on the ground. But it's quite a coincidence that there's something happening, that they've possibly taken pictures of some of it. It's been seen by other witnesses. There was another group of ski tourists from the university on the Chistop Massif, which is an area of mountain which is about 30 to 40 miles away from the Dyatlov Pass, and they saw it as well. So it's not denied that there was something going on in the night sky, because too many people have seen it, basically.
Yeah, I mean, I've looked at those photographs you were referring to, the new ones that have been developed. Some of them, as you say, you really can't tell anything. But certainly one or two that looks like there is an object, isn't there, in the sky and somewhat in the distance that you've magnified it. It looks like it's something. What exactly is a complete mystery, but it certainly does appear they were photographing something. I mean, of course, you've got the classic last photograph on the reel that we've always known about, this strange sort of what could be described as being a flare in the distance or something close up that's completely out of focus. But it certainly suggests that, as you say, there was something in the sky that night. And so we'll be referring back to the incident you described, I think it was the early 2000s, with two people. One worked at the borite mine, I think it was, and the other was a sort of a ranger, if you like, in the woods, not a million miles away from there. That they had strange experiences of anomalous lights that actually scared them. Do you mind telling us that story briefly?
Well, the Yuri Yakimov, who was the foreman in the mine, he was working on his own one night in a mine pit, and he said there was a light drizzle and everything was very quiet, and he suddenly became aware of something was going on around him, and he wondered if it was because they have a lot of trouble up there with theft of machinery and equipment and all the rest of it, and he wondered if it was somebody up to no good with that was going to try and steal some equipment. Anyway, he said a set of light. He said there was a kind of a breeze, and he said that he shouted out something like "Who's there?" or whatever, and a set of lights came on, which were pointed at him. And he said it was a really strange feeling because there was no sound at all, but the lights were so powerful that. He said that the strength of the beams, the shadows they were casting, like if it hit a tree, the shadow of the tree would be razor sharp. The beam was that strong. He said you almost couldn't look at them because they were so bright. And he said there was, I think he said there was 3 or 4 of them in a row, as if 4 people were standing, each holding a very strong light. So he continued looking at them, but then he said what happened was the lights started coming towards him and they started splitting up. The more lights were being created, and he said they started juggling all over. He said the effect was if you had a group of people who were trying to scare you and that they were multiplying. And he said, and the lights were going all over the place as if they were holding the light in their hand. Like they say it was a flashlight that had a large handle, because he said the light started going all over the place as if they were. But he said what the effect was that they were coming towards him, and he said the feeling he had was a real fear. So he got behind a piece of machinery and he hid, and everything stopped, but the lights stopped and still continued shining towards him. But he didn't look at them, and eventually the lights just switched off. He said there was a bang like a large electric shock and quite a strong breeze. And he said, but he said the effect that it had on him. He said he felt really ill for several days afterwards. He said it was a kind of a queasy feeling. But he said that he went then to the works canteen. He felt he had to report it, but when he started telling people looked at him and said, "You're nuts." Well, you would, I suppose, wouldn't you?
Yes.
A bloke comes along and starts saying some lights have attacked me and all the rest of it. And he said that he didn't really want to pursue it because his feeling was nobody's going to believe me anyway. But he felt that he should report it in a way because he thought, well, no matter how strange the thing was that happened, he thought, well, if it is somebody playing silly games and a load of equipment goes missing, he'll get the blame. That was the one thing that was on his mind. But he said he felt so ill that he almost was going to take time off work. He felt so queasy and strange and tired. It lasted for about a week to 10 days. But anyway, about a short while after that, he read in the local newspaper a forest ranger working in the same area. He's given me the coordinates of both where both incidents took place, and they're not far from the Dyatlov Pass. I mean, they're not exactly next door, but they're in the area. Yeah. And this forest ranger was an old seasoned salt, if you like, who'd spent all his life working in the forests on his own. And more to the point, he had a rifle with him because his responsibility was to look after his area of the forest and tend to the wildlife and just make sure everything was all right. So you've got a man who lives out in the forest who's used to being on his own and dealing with bears and wolves and everything else in all weathers. So not a bloke that's going to be easily frightened. And the same thing happened to him because he tracked this forest ranger down. He read something in the paper about it, and he tracked him down and spoke to him, and he gave a full account. And it was exactly the same thing had happened to him. He was sitting one night after he'd done his work in his area of the forest, and a set of lights lit up, and again the same thing. He looked at them, and the lights started coming towards him, and he hid behind a log. And his feeling was one of terrible fear as well. And don't forget, he had, as I say, quite a powerful rifle with him as well, but he said he didn't even want to use it. He was just afraid of whatever it was that was there, because he felt that whatever it wasn't human, or, if you like, of this earth. He said his only thought was to try and get away somehow, but he didn't want to show himself again. And the same, after a couple of hours, the lights had stopped while he was hiding, but he could see them because they were going over the log where he was. And eventually the lights closed down again with a massive electric kind of bang, and again a breeze. So exactly the same thing had happened to him. Now, you could say, well, he's round the bend as well and all the rest of it, but I keep a very open mind on this type of thing, because it's two different individuals working in. It's not like two forest workers or two people from the same work gang, or two forestry workers, two totally different individuals that didn't know each other, where exactly the same thing has happened to them. So,
yeah, I mean, we were, Richard in our chat room, is the station manager, owner rather, I should say, was saying that there are incidents of strange light anomalies sort of recorded around the world, but what I find the most fascinating, I think you probably do too, is the fact how they were affected by them. These are two guys who wouldn't normally have been spooked by anything like this, but yet they were both, as I say, to the point that one guy has a rifle but doesn't fancy even using that, so he obviously felt a real sense of danger from those lights. Which I find makes them mysterious.
And more to the point, I don't know what it'd be like to actually have to live and work in a forest nearly all your life, but you become a part of it, I suppose. But there's plenty of bears up there. There's packs of wolves. This guy was living in amongst them, and that didn't faze him at all. You know, he had a rifle for the bears, but suddenly it was something that was so strange, if you like, that was beyond his understanding, which basically is he was so fearful by it that he just didn't want to go anywhere near it. He wanted to get as far away as possible. And he also had the same feeling of queasiness and tiredness for about a week afterwards, he said to Yuri Akimov. I met Yuri Akimov when I was over there. I met him a couple of times now, and interviewed him, and you can see a picture of him on my website. He came
yes, of course, yes.
You know. But I find him quite plausible.
Yeah, I mean, to me, that's what strikes me as the thing, that maybe the light, these anomalies, were seen by the group outside the tent. They cut their way out, the light disappears, but they're thinking, I don't fancy hanging around and see if that comes back. And one of the things that I've always found interesting is, of course, they had a cache of supplies in the woods not too far away. And when I've looked at the map, this is again my own thinking, I don't know what you think of this, Keith, but it looks almost as if they took the wrong turning. They came out of the tent, went one direction thinking they were heading towards their food cache, only to realise they'd gone the wrong way. And they kind of kept going down to the edge of the trees, partly because it gave them some cover, partly maybe getting away from those lights, but in the hope that they'd gone to the right place to where their cache was, only to realise they were in the wrong place, which is why someone started to head back towards the tent. So I find wondering that maybe they were sat there waiting, is that light going to come back? You know, is it going to affect us? And then an argument breaking out about whether to go back to the tent or not. I mean, it doesn't explain everything, obviously, but what do you think about the idea that perhaps they went in the wrong direction? That's
quite possible, because when we were camping there, we actually camped where the cache was at the base of the mountain, and it's quite a steep run up it, but it would have made sense to have come out of the tent and then and I must admit that's quite a plausible scenario, that they would have gone back towards it, because it didn't really. I can see why they went where they went, down to the tree line, because that was where that tree line is, and bear in mind it's moved forward now about, well, it must have been at least 100 meters.
Mm-hmm.
The trees have started moving up the slope of the mountain from when they were there. But it was actually the closest point to the tent. But it would have made far more sense to have, if you like, guided yourself slightly to the right to get back to where they'd left the cache. To get, there's a stone belt ridge there that runs down from the mountain. It sort of dips down, and then it comes up again to where there's a lot of exposed rocks. And they were to the side of that, so they'd have had to have gone around that area to get to where the cache was. And again, that doesn't make a lot of sense that they would not go there, because at least there was some food there. There was some supplies and provisions. It would have made more sense to do that than to have gone where they did. But the other thing I suppose you got to say is it was late at night. There was no moon. There was a blizzard. There must have been some element of being whatever had happened to them that had caused them to do that. There must have been maybe an element of shock even. So that they're probably. But you see, again, they were up there testing themselves, if you like. So here's something that happens out of the ordinary. You'd have expected them possibly to say, "Well, let's get a grip here and see what we're doing." I mean, they're walking to their virtual deaths.
Yes,
without in bare feet and socks. Zolotarev, as I say, had won medals for close combat fighting, and he'd fought in Stalingrad. So I can't imagine he'd have been easily fazed by something. But it must have been something that was so shocking that it made them behave like they did.
Yeah, exactly. And as I say, just my thinking about they came out, as you say, in a blizzard, they're in the dark, they've been disorientated at least by something that's caused them to want to leave. They started going one direction, and by the time they reached the tree line, I thought, oh crap, we've gone the wrong way. We were going for that side, but we've missed it.
It's possible. It's certainly possible. I can see that the tree line is a place of safety. Part of my theory on the Soviet military thing is if there was an exercise going on and 2 aircraft had supposedly flown over that night, 2 bombers, if there'd been a couple of explosions, Zolotarev, who has got military experience and has fought in a war, has maybe said, we've ended up in the middle of an exercise, let's get the hell out of here. Or at least get to the trees where if there's going to be blasts and shrapnel, we're better protected down there. And it could be that the blasts were happening a bit further away, but it made sense to think, well, we're in the middle of an exercise to try and at least get to a place of safety, even if we're leaving ourselves exposed. So it's possible.
So
the tree line would have actually have given them a bit of, protection from the exposure as well, wouldn't it?
Well, it would, yeah. It would have given them protection for the wind up there. Is by. Well, I was there in August, and every time we went up onto the mountain, it's a constant. I'm not saying it blows you over, but it seems to come over the top of the mountain, and it comes over the ridge, and it's just constantly against. It's like you're standing there, and there's somebody standing beside you, and they're leaning on you, pushing you over. I remember I injured my knee quite badly up there, and I went up onto where they had the memorial rock is, where they got the Dyatlov Memorial, and it was so bad. I was standing there, and I hobbled around to the other side of it just to get away from the wind. So that wind, it really is constant. So if you think that's in August, and it was chilly enough in August, you can imagine what it'd be like at minus 27 and minus 40. So it would literally cut through you.
Absolutely.
Well, there's another aspect of this that I was quite interested in, but they lit a fire, didn't they?
Yeah, they attempted to light. Well, they did light it because the burn marks on the bodies showed that there must have been some flames from it. But it was I'm not saying a half-hearted attempt, but it wasn't enough to keep them alive by any stretch of the imagination. And even if they got a massive roaring fire going, it has to be said that how long would that have kept them going, because they'd have had to constantly be going away from it to get more wood. So
how
it was.
Did they light it? How was like a fire starter or something like that found on any of the bodies afterwards?
Well, it's peculiar because they're saying that some of them had matches, and the man who was Lev Ivanov's boss, who I've got the 2 interviews with him in my book, he said that there was matches lying around by the fire, although there's nothing reported about the matches in the actual. So the initial investigation that was carried out, but it's believed that they had some matches to start the fire, but other people dispute it. But I don't see how they could have done it without matches.
Absolutely. I can imagine it'd be quite a struggle with matches when it's that kind of cold and the wind's blowing.
Yeah, I was just thinking that. It's bad enough in just like a breeze, isn't it, to light a match, let alone in those kind of winds.
Yeah. Well, there would have been protection where they were, because they were the cedar tree, although it's now within the forest, if you like, because it's the forest is they were on the edge of the tree line there, but there is a bit of protection from the wind because the wind isn't quite as harsh down there. But it still would have come down the mountain. There would have still been wind. It was a strong wind blowing that night, so there still would have been some effect of the wind, and it would have been pitch black as well. So I just don't see how. I couldn't see how they could do anything considering it was so dark. The whole thing is just peculiar. Where they built the snow shelter, you think, well, they must have been feeling their way around even to do that.
Because it all would have been in the dark, of course.
Yeah, it would have been, yeah.
Yeah, I've got a note here about the fact they were climbing. 1 or 2 of the trees had damage up to 16 feet high, as if they were either pulling branches off or were climbing up the trees to see if they could see further. Because I know, obviously, you have a campfire burning. You've got a light in the immediate area, but it actually blinds you to anything further away. So I can envisage perhaps tree climbing to see if they could see anything going on nearer the tent, perhaps, or moving branches.
Yeah, well, I've stood by that tree and I've got pictures of it on the website. There's some dispute as to whether it is the cedar tree, but it's pretty dead. You can see, I'm not saying it's the branches they broke, but you can see a number of the branches. I think a lot of souvenir hunters have been there, helped themselves to it. But again, why would you climb 16 or 20 feet up a tree when there's other trees about further down?
Absolutely.
You can just snap them all. I presume maybe they didn't want to walk too far, but it implies that they were going up the tree to try and see what was happening at the tent. Because what happens when I was walking down from where the tent was located, it kind of disappears from view. It was held up. I mean, the tent wasn't up, but there's flags there, which they're not quite the height of the poles. But as you're going down the slope towards the tree line, and you look back, you can see it disappearing. It's almost like it's on a ledge, and it starts to disappear from view. And part of the theory is that they'd gone up the cedar tree to look back to the tent, but why would you do that if there wasn't a reason to? There must have been some reason, and again, I think that's quite plausible that they were doing, because they found skin, that had been torn and stuck on the tree itself. There was obviously bodily marks left on the tree from where they've been climbing up it and maybe cut or grazed themselves on it. So they must have been going up there to try and see the tent. But again, without light, you couldn't see anything.
Unless they believe there was some kind of light anomaly that was visible.
There. At the tent of some kind.
Yeah, that's it. Unless there was some kind of a light anomaly, perhaps it did reoccur, which is what kept them perhaps away from going back to it.
Well, the theory is that one of the theories is that they went there to escape whatever was there and were waiting for it to die down before they went back. But
Absolutely.
If you've got any sense, and they were all intelligent, educated people, they were obviously in mortal danger for what they'd done. They put themselves into extreme cold with wearing virtually nothing. They must have started shivering almost immediately. So it was just a matter of time before hypothermia overcame them anyway, let alone the serious injuries. But presumably, if there was something at the tent that was dangerous, then it must have been more of a danger than the danger that they were in. If you
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, obviously, if they don't even have the time to get dressed properly, slash their way out of the tent to escape it, But it often comes back to that same thought. Well, if it didn't run away from it, then whatever it was they thought they were being threatened by clearly wasn't there when it got outside. But decided, regardless of the fact that the tent was probably still serviceable, even if it had holes in, decided to walk away from it. It always strikes me as that just seems an odd thing to do. However, you kind of try and paint the picture.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it does. The only thing I think is that possibly they. And again, I know it's my pet theory, but contradict it if you want. But if there was a military exercise going on, like me in the tent that night with that car, I thought the car was literally on top of me, and it wasn't. It was I didn't slash my way out, but I really got out of there as fast as I could. Could it be that they slashed their way out of the tent? The explosions they heard were maybe a third of a mile away, but the mere fact there was explosions and lights coming down, Zolotarev may have said, there's a military exercise going on over there. There's a danger. It's coming this way. You wouldn't necessarily run, but you'd start walking quickly.
Sure.
It's a possibility if it's far enough away. But you realise if it gets any closer, you're in great danger. But he said it could be. He said, let's get down to the tree line, wait till this passes, and we'll come back. That would make sense, because you wouldn't necessarily run at that point. You would just walk fast. I think it's just a guess, really.
Well, certainly someone that's had much experience you have in studying this, then I think your guesses are pretty valid, certainly.
Well, but it can contradict it. The thing with the military theory is there's another theory that was put forward by a Russian journalist, and he was the first person who really started pulling this case apart. And his view was that they died somewhere else, and the military were responsible. They set the scene, if you like, of the tent where it was, and just put the bodies where they were. That they'd all died from an explosion or whatever. The bodies had been moved from where it had happened, because where it happened there was damage to trees, and you could work out pretty quick what may have happened if you see trees uprooted or smashed branches, dead birds, and all the rest of it, and that they had been placed there. There was a pilot the day before the tent was found by the searchers. There was a pilot who had flown over near the tent and had seen the tent on the side of the mountain, and he said he saw two bodies beside it. Gennady Petrushev, his name was. I met his widow when I was over on my last visit, and she said that she felt it was always very strange, because he died in an air crash 4 years later, 3 or 4 years later.
So what do you think of the idea then that he was all set up in terms of what he claimed to have seen from his plane flying over?
Well, he radioed back, which is what you would do. He radioed back the fact that he'd seen the tent. And if you look in my book, there's an interview with the man who is Lev Ivanov's boss. Mm-hmm. And he's interviewed by a current, I think he's just retired anyway, Leonid Proshkin. He's, if you like, an up-to-date investigator. He was doing the same sort of job. But so if you like, you got a modern detective interviewing an older detective, to put it in a rough way. And he said that he's looked through the whole case files and all the rest of it, and he said, I find it peculiar that every day that the search was going on, there's between 6 to 12 telegrams going backwards and forwards. And on the 25th, the day he radioed back about the position of the tent, there's not one telegram. All the telegrams had disappeared.
That is strange.
He said every day, literally every day over the whole period, the 21st, 22nd, 23rd, whatever, and then the 25th, there's nothing. And then the following day, the 26th, another dozen telegrams.
That is definitely suspicious.
Yeah, well, that's a modern investigator, Russian, who said that to him. And when he said it to Lev Ivanov's boss, Evgeny Okishev, he says, I can't explain that, basically, which he can't.
No.
Well, at this point, we're going to just take another little quick break. Don't go anywhere, because we have still got so much to discuss about this subject, haven't we, lads?
Absolutely.
Yep.
So we're just going to take a quick break.
Hello, this is Kerry Ann. Please join me every Thursday at 9 p.m. on 7th Sanctum, only on Parasearch UK Radio.
Hello, join me, Paul Rook, every Tuesday at 9 p.m. for the Trident Paranormal Show, with interviews, news and reviews from this galaxy and beyond, only on Parasearch UK Radio.
Hey, Teresa.
What, Jay?
What are you doing Wednesdays at 9 p.m.?
I'm hosting Paranormal Hindsight.
Can I join you?
Well, all right.
Looking forward to it every Wednesday night at 9 p.m. on Parasearch UK Radio.
You're listening to Parasearch UK Radio. News, views and reviews from the world of the paranormal from across the UK and beyond. Find us on Facebook, Twitter and the World Wide Web. Parasearch UK Radio.
Welcome back. We are talking with Keith McClosky tonight regarding the Dyatlov Pass, and this is a whole fascinating incident that happened in the Russian mountains. Now, oh my goodness, where do you start? Because everything seems to contradict each other, doesn't it, Andy? You know, we seem to be going round in circles with this. You know, you've got almost like a frantic leaving the tent to calmly seeming to walk down to the tree lines, and there are contradictions on every single step of this this incident. It's absolutely fascinating.
I mean, it's certainly difficult to build up a complete coherent picture of all the events that were occurring to account for all of them. I mean, any kind of conspiracy or explanation of an unusual event has to be able to account for all the things that have occurred in order for it to be seen as completely coherent and one you can absolutely run with. But as Keith's saying, there are elements to suggest this could be a Russian military operation that kind of they indirectly found themselves in the middle of, or actually got caught up indirectly. But again, we have the problem of not really lots of evidence of other people being near them at the time, so it suggests something being seen further away. So I guess, Keith, if we were to sort of drag you into a court of law and demand you give us your explanation, you would head towards the idea of a Russian military operation that they were either indirectly caught up in or directly, as in they're actually in the centre of it.
Well, it's the only reason I tend towards that, of course. Like a survival expert has knowledge of avalanches. I've studied the Soviet military for many, many years, particularly Soviet military aviation.
Mm-hmm.
The military activities of the northern Urals, that area, is all about military aviation and missiles. So it's not a recognised training area necessarily, but that's not to say it wasn't. Mm-hmm. But it seems to tend towards that, but I'll contradict my own theory in that I know enough about, say, missiles and bombers and aircraft to try and piece together some kind of scenario that happened to them, but I can't make it fit. That's the problem. I can't say there were 3 Yak-25s flew over from a base. There was a base about 80 miles away to the east. It doesn't seem to add up, though. That's the problem. But the reason why I still tend to think there's some kind of military involvement or whatever is because there's 2 things. One is the radiation, and the other one is the arrival, which I put in my book, of the arrival of the second most powerful man in the Soviet legal system, who basically, the day after the case was closed, the day after the radiation report was finished, he arrived, went to the prosecutor's office, and went to see the heads of the local Communist Party in Sverdlovsk, and closed the whole case down. And he said to Klinov, who was in charge of the prosecutor's office, and to Ivanov and to Okishov, tell them, i.e. the parents of the group, it was an accident, and that's it. You know, he didn't say anything else. And what he's saying, and it's in my book, what he's saying is, what Okishov was saying is that Yurakov sat there, he'd arrived from Moscow. It said he didn't have the slightest interest in what they had to say about the case. He said he didn't, they asked him about armaments tests. They said he didn't deny it, but he didn't say anything else either. He said it's almost as if the whole case was clear to him. He knew what had happened, but he wasn't saying anything. And then he says, close it down and tell them it was an accident. And what Okishov says is, you imagine we've just found, or recently found, the last 4 bodies which have got strange and terrible injuries, and we're told to close it down. Because he had organised a trip back up to the Dyatlov Pass with a group of troops to really go around the whole area and search and to try and see if they could get to the bottom of it. He said they weren't allowed to do it. The whole thing was just shut down. So why would you do that?
Yeah.
If it was an avalanche or as ball lightning? I mean, is a bloke going to come from Moscow, the second most powerful man in the legal system, and so not even admit it's ball lightning or whatever, or an avalanche, just say close it down, tell them it was an accident? Why would he even do that?
Yeah, I mean, that screams of a military incident being covered up, doesn't it?
It does, yeah. To me, it does. But I can't fit the if you like, you've got a jigsaw there and you can't quite see the pieces, but I can't make it fit.
Yeah, again, that comes back to that same problem, doesn't it? You've got the guys in the ravine. How do those injuries occur?
Yeah. And the other thing is about Okishov talks about radiation. There's an implication that Lev Ivanov undertook that on his own. I mean, he was just a detective, if you like, the Soviet equivalent. He was an investigator, but if you like, a Soviet detective. Anything to do with radiation and nuclear, the whole subject of nuclear matters, if you like, in the Soviet Union would have been a red light area. Nobody in his right mind would go near it if they thought that was responsible. So the instruction that came for the radiation tests came from Moscow to conduct tests and see if there was any radiation involved. So it implies that there's something there to do with radiation, but what exactly, nobody knows. But don't forget also that the whole area up there, they didn't close it down as some people say. What happened was they wouldn't give permits for anybody to visit. I mean, just as today, to go up there officially, you have to register with I had to register with the police and the Ministry of Emergency Situations. You can do it without, but you don't really want to get into trouble. You don't want to be stopped and asked for your papers by anybody and say, well, what are you doing here? But at least if you're registered, you can travel okay. But in those days, security was very tight. You couldn't go anywhere you liked. So Sverdlovsk in those days was a closed city. So they just stopped giving permits out, other than if you're a forestry worker, you had a reason to be there, but nobody else could go up there. So basically they closed the whole area down for 4 years. So it makes you wonder, were they doing something? Or whatever. If there was elements of radiation up there, maybe they were tidying that up. Who knows? That's the thing.
In the autopsies of the bodies that they did, wasn't there radiation on some of the bodies?
Yeah, there was, and on the clothes, beta radiation, which is suggestive of military-type radiation. Some people have said it was fallout from there was a nuclear bomb. Bombs were tested up in an island, I can't even pronounce it, but Novaya Zemlya, up in the Arctic Ocean, that maybe there had been fallout of radiation from those bombs. But it's a bit fanciful. The thing is, there's a nuclear warhead storage area, and they replace nuclear warheads and get rid of the older ones. That was there when this happened. That had just started. So there was a nuclear warhead storage area in that region. So would there have been a leak or something from that? It's, again, that's possible. Okishov says in his interview that he had been talking to somebody who said that, I mean, there was a moratorium on nuclear tests, but he spoke to somebody in the Soviet Union from that time who said that they moved nuclear testing up from where it was in the Caucasus up into the northern Urals, but he wouldn't say any more than that. So there is a suggestion that there's some kind of nuclear testing going on up there.
Yeah.
But again, if you're testing, whether it's underground or they weren't allowed to do it over, they'd signed an agreement not to do it overground. But if there was some testing that was underground, could it have been a leak of some kind from that? It's quite possible.
But the levels weren't that high.
Well, they weren't that high, but it's a peculiar thing to even test for. Well, if you find bodies dead that look as if if you found somebody who'd just been hit by a car, you wouldn't say test him for radiation.
No,
no, that's true.
Certainly not.
Yeah, but sorry, I'm not being facetious there, but
no.
The whole radiation thing is odd. But the beta particles wash off in water, and don't forget, all the bodies had been lying in water for 3 weeks. So a lot of the worst of the radiation had already been washed away.
Yeah,
that's true.
There are some questions around the autopsies, aren't there, about exactly who had what injuries, from what I remember reading. It's almost a bit slapdash as to how it was handled. Am I right in thinking that?
Yeah, you are, but I'll be honest with you. I don't believe the autopsies. I think the trouble is, if you come to this case as a newcomer and you look at it and you say, well, it happened in 1959. There's not a lot of other paperwork, but we have got the autopsies. But everybody looks at them as if Moses had brought them down from the mountain. They're set in stone, and you can't dispute anything. Well, why can't you dispute it? The Soviets were quite good at disinformation.
Yes.
If you want to hide something, all you've got to do is say, well, half of them died of hypothermia, half of them died from terrible injuries, and you can't explain it, can you?
Yeah.
Could it have been that they'd all been killed in a blast, and it was obvious that they'd been killed in a blast? Burst lungs and eardrums from a pressure wave from a blast. But if you put one cause of death, that they'd all died in a blast, it's quite obvious that the military or somebody associated with the military is responsible. Even if you said they'd all died of hypothermia, people would say, well, what the hell made them that? But once you start mixing it all up, Luda's tongue missing, I'm not even sure I believe that. You've got to question everything, really. But the trouble is, when you question everything, then you've got nothing solid to base your theories on. But I think that's the way it's meant to be. I think that's the way
again, we've got the photographs, of course, of the bodies, but we don't necessarily know that they've not been doctored either. The actual physical bodies, not necessarily the photographs of the bodies themselves, not been changed around between being found and then being photographed.
No, I mean, all we know about the bodies is that they're dead. They died definitely in very strange circumstances. And then the next thing you go along to is the report of how they were all found and the autopsies. Those are the only... The one thing that might start looking at it, but the trouble is, if it's a pressure wave, you wouldn't find it. But if you dug the bodies up now, you could test the bones for further radiation or whatever, possibly, or even the injuries. You could look at the injuries again, because presumably it's the bodies would still have the broken limbs and everything. So you could maybe work something out from that. But there's no chance of exhuming the bodies for that anyway.
I know they were talking about the fact.
Sorry, Andy.
I was just saying, I know, but some of the bodies are buried in one graveyard and others are buried in a different graveyard. And there were moves to hope to bring them all together, but even that's not been allowed, has it, for removing the bodies? No,
there's two. Two of them are buried in another cemetery. I mean, there's talk about why that was done, as if there was KGB involvement, because the other cemetery is supposedly for higher-ups of the time, if you like. But I've been to both cemeteries, and there's wild dogs in them. There's people jacking up heroin. They're not places you really want to go in on your own. It's the relatives that won't allow Zolotarev and it's Kolovatov. The relatives won't allow their two bodies to be exhumed to be taken across to the main cemetery, because Yuri Yudin is buried with the rest of them now in the main area. But Yuri Kontsevich of the Dyatlov Foundation had made an attempt to at least try and bring them all together, which was always quite a noble gesture, but they wouldn't allow him to do it. So what he did was he's moved, he dug up some of the soil near the two bodies, and he's moved that over, so at least there's a kind of a symbolic gesture of them being together.
Sorry, Kerry.
That's okay. I was reading an article regarding this, and one of the theories is to do with the infrasound phenomenon.
Yeah, that's been put forward in one book, but the thing is that there's two elements of that infrasound. One is that there was an infrasound weapon, and the other one is that the infrasound was created by the kind of vortex effect of the way the mountain is. Both are possible. What I would say about the infrasound, say the vortex effect, is that not everybody is affected in the same way by it. Some people are not affected by it at all. So it implies that all 9 of them would have had to have been affected. And the thing is, if they're really disorientated, they wouldn't be walking in a straight line down to the tree line. They'd be wandering all over the place if it was having that kind of effect on their mental faculties. Well, by the walk down to the tree line almost implies a kind of an organised trip down there. And the other thing is, with infrasound, it doesn't create mechanical damage. The kind of injuries that they sustained, the broken ribs. Infrasound only affects soft tissue. It doesn't affect bones at all.
It's also a topic that often talked about in the world of the paranormal. The fact that there could be some of the causes of people's strange experiences are down to infrasound, but it's very much open for debate, certainly.
It is, yeah. And the other thing about the weapon element of that, there was a gentleman called Vladimir Gavro that a lot of people, he was Russian, but he was living in France back in I think it was 1930s, I'm not sure, but he'd done a research into infrasound. But the trouble with that is a lot of people thought he was he'd done some very good research in other areas, but a lot of people thought he was coming off the wall with, his work on infrasound. I've heard that from experts in the field, not from people who say he's talking a load of nonsense. And the possibility that there was a weapon, you can actually weaponize infrasound, but apparently you would need, with a state of research into it, and this is today, you would need a machine that was the size of a 40-foot container to use an infrasound weapon, which, and bear in mind, this is 1959, so you'd need to get something the size of a 40-foot container up into the mountains when you can barely get yourself through the mud, to use it up in the... And why would you do that? Why not? If you had a large infrasound, why not use it in a city, or at least in a facility, rather than up into the middle of nowhere in the middle of a blizzard? Doesn't make a lot of sense.
No, that's true. It was, it was just something I read. I thought I'd bring it to the table.
No, it's quite plausible. I mean, the other thing I'd say about infrasound is I camped up on the mountain one night. The wind was there, and there's been hundreds of people. It's actually people pass through the Dyatlov Pass regularly, going north and south. It's part of a route now. There's loads of people go up there, camp up there, and it's, to my knowledge, and to the Dyatlov Foundation, so nobody's ever been affected by infrasound since it opened in 1963. Since the area reopened, and it's like Piccadilly Circus up there now. But it is. I mean, you'd be where we were, where the cache was. You come down from the route from where the memorial stone is, and there was people passing by every day who were hiking. But there's it's a route to the northern pole, the polar Urals.
Yeah.
And people go, it's an established route now. The Mansy are there as well all the time, and although they're not into they become like what's the word? The modern American Indians now. I think a lot of the old ways of the Mansy are dying out with the reindeer. I believe the government there in Russia, I may be wrong on it, but I think they get the state subsidy to make them stay in the area, so at least it stays populated as they do with other ethnic groups in Russia, because it's a very underpopulated area. The whole of if you go north across Siberia, there's massive area, bigger than Africa, and it's hardly anybody living there.
It is one of those things you can find someone doing the research on this a couple of years when I first uncovered it, sort of sitting at home nice and cosy and comfortable, just trying to imagine what it must be like to be out in those sort of areas in the middle of the winter. I mean, you said to yourself, even in August it's pretty unpleasant, but to be there in the middle of, say, February in that deep snow, that's not my idea of a holiday, certainly at the best of times.
No, but having said that, they train for it. I'm not a young man anymore, but they were early 20s. Extremely fit, and they had all the gear for it. So and they enjoyed it. And the thing is, in the Soviet Union in those days, in the West, people had rock and roll, and there was a lot more money in, say, the USA. I'm not saying it was quite the same in Britain, but teenagers had things to do. But in the Soviet Union in those days, they were still recovering from the war, and there wasn't a lot of money about, and youngsters, I'm not saying they're youngsters in their early 20s, but they needed to let their hair down, and that was a way of doing it, because the society there was riddled with KGB informers. So it was a chance to get away out of the city and go out into the wild and just be yourself for a couple of weeks.
Absolutely. I was Ian, just sort of doing my research into this, it was very much a closed society, and you did feel very much that you would be watched wherever you were doing it, to be careful. And I know one of the theories that does bounce around is about one of the chaps whose name just escaped my screen, who was considered to be older than the rest of the group, was Zolotayov. He was 38, and he said to himself he had military experience, he'd fought in Stalingrad, that it seemed a little odd that someone of so much older than the rest of the group should be involved. But, I mean, again, from what I understand, he was part of his training. He was trying to become an expert ski guide, I think it was. Am I right?
Yeah, he was, and he'd been working in the Altai Mountains, which is another very popular area for ski tourism, and to him it was just a way of keeping his hand in. There is talk that he had a bit of a soft spot for Zina. She was she was one of the two females in the group, and very, very attractive. But the thing is, he was actually old enough to be the father of nearly everybody in the group. When you think he was old, it was actually his birthday the night he died. He would have been 39. Yeah. But he was, he didn't really seem to fit despite that. What Yuri Yudin said about him was that once they got to know him, he fitted in, he sang songs with them, and they considered him one of the lads. But it's a bit of an odd. I mean, there's a theory that he was a KGB agent, and that they were meeting foreign agents in the northern Urals to hand over radioactive materials, because a couple of them had been working or were involved with secret nuclear establishments. So, and that they were going to hand over some radioactive material. The KGB was in charge of the whole operation. But I always say to that theory, well, why would you trek into the middle of the mountains and meet some secret agents when you could hand it to them on a street corner, or a dead letter drive? There'd be a lot of easier ways of doing it. Apart from anything else, if the KGB watched everything, if they thought there was something going on that you'd find any secret agents who met them up, they just look for their tracks. But I just can't imagine it, really. But it's a theory.
Yeah, the old standard sit in the park somewhere and hand over the briefcase that looks exactly the same as the other briefcase and walk away.
What's the point? Well, it just doesn't make sense to me, because you would need two groups to meet up. I'm not saying it's the middle of nowhere, but it's there's blizzards. It's not like you say, I'll see you at that tree over there that's 10 trees down from the other one. I mean, you could say you could meet up there, but it just doesn't make a lot of sense. It really doesn't. It's and also part of that theory works only if you consider that one member of it, if you like, was in on it. The rest of them weren't in on it. So how was he going to explain to everybody else he's bumped into 3 blokes in the middle of nowhere and he's giving them something? I mean, I haven't really gone into that theory too well because I just don't think it holds water. But if somebody comes along and says, I've got a document here that proves it because they'd set it all up, and who's to say how things work or don't work? But and that's the other thing I wanted to mention. There's a lot of forgeries starting to appear now with regard to this story. Because when I was last over there in Russia, I was told that there was a piece of canvas that was being touted around that supposedly had blood on it that was found in the KGB archives, which was from the tent, which had genuine blood on it, that they'd been murdered there, and it turned out the whole thing's a forgery. And there's other documents that have been appearing that are forgeries. So there's all sorts of disinformation starting to come out about it now as well. So you've got to be careful what particular route you go down.
Well, am I right in thinking the tent itself has now disappeared?
Oh yeah. The tent, that was one of the first things I asked about. It disappeared completely. The trouble is, if it was a bit of a touchy subject, if you like, it was believed to have been kept in a police station and put into a cupboard, and nobody knows basically what happened to it. Would a souvenir hunter take it? Nobody knows really. It could be that it stayed in a cupboard for 10 or 15 years, and somebody was cleaning the place up and thought, we don't need this crappy tent. They're all dead now, and we'll just chuck it out. So
it's a little bit like President Kennedy's brain going missing, isn't it?
Yeah, but nobody knows what happened to it.
Yeah, so it's like JFK's brain vanishing from the archives. It's like, this is actually quite important evidence, but no, let's just discard it. Talking about sort of the more sort of kind of, there's some more crackpot theories, of course. One we really have to address is the idea of the Yeti, the wonderful snowman attacking them. I mean, I'm going to have to ask you, Keith, what do you think of that theory?
Well, I put everything in a kind of probability, so I'd put the possibly at the top of that theory. You could have the avalanche, the military accident, possible Mansy killings or whatever. You could put them up near the top. I'm afraid I've got to put the Yeti theory down near the bottom because it's. I haven't researched the Yeti too much, but you've got a large hominoid creature that resembles a bear. You would expect it to probably use its teeth or claws if it's got them, and you'd expect those marks to appear on the bodies, which there was no kind of animal predator attacks. It could be the crushing injuries came from, for Zolotarev and Luda, Yeti had crushed held them and crushed them in a kind of a bear hug, but the thing that argues against that is there's no tracks. Yeah. Any Yeti is like a large bear, say, or you'd expect to see some kind of tracks, wouldn't you?
Absolutely. I mean, I know we have the single photograph, a rather blurred image in the background of what has been purported to have been the Yeti, but I know, having looked at the photographs myself, the next photograph, the previous photograph on the reel, shows one of the group in clothing that's not dissimilar to the figure that you see in the background, supposedly, of the Yeti. So that kind of eliminates that one for me anyway.
Yeah. Well, it's supposedly the French. He was born in a gulag. Nikolai Bobrignol. He's supposedly returning from having had a Jimmy Riddle.
Exactly.
Somebody's funny idea of a bit of a joke of taking a picture of it. Admit it does have it's got a crouching. When you look at it, it's kind of a kind of sinister stance because it's like it's crouching, isn't it? But had he just been behind a tree and he was just gingerly making his way back, I suppose you would be crouching a bit anyway. But
Taking a week at that kind of temperature is rather risky at the best of times.
Yeah. I mean, if somebody comes along and who knows, they thought the coelacanth was extinct, and yet they found one in 1936 in a fishing net. But if somebody provides evidence of a very large tribe of Yetis in northern Siberia that move around a bit, you never know. There might be one. But until somebody produces some evidence, this is the trouble. You can come out with all sorts of things, but you need to back it up with some kind of credible evidence.
Absolutely.
So you've got to explain the lack of. Well, nobody's ever caught a Yeti yet. There's pictures, there's film. There's some film of Bigfoot and what have you, but no, there's no footprint there. You'd expect and also I would think a large animal that didn't have a lot of reasoning power, that was in a rage, I'd expect them to virtually demolish the tent.
Yeah, true.
Absolutely. I mean,
What
obviously
are the
being a
other
paranormal
theories?
station.
Sorry.
We've
We've both got so many questions we want to ask you.
I do apologise, Keith. We're usually better than this. We usually don't talk at each other all the time.
No, but we're both so eager.
Absolutely. The other thing I was going to say was, obviously as a paranormal station, we're not going to discount the existence of Yetis altogether, but I think we could rule them out in this particular case.
No, if you're talking paranormal, I would be looking at what's happening in the sky. To me, again, with paranormal kind of activity, you would have to, again, produce evidence of it. But there's something odd going on in the sky. If you take the negatives as being fairly, genuine, a lot of it's inexplicable. But if something is going on in the sky, there's some kind of, which ties in with what Yuri Yakimov was saying about the lights. There's also, and this thing about the snap of electricity, there's talk of some kind of energy-based weapon, which is a possibility, because Ivanov, when you read his interview, he didn't do it. He did an article with a journalist in 1990, which is in my book, and it's almost like he was reaching the end of his life, and he wanted a kind of atone for the whole thing. But he talks about unidentified flying objects. He's saying it's not to say that it's some kind of alien, but there's something going on. He says it himself. They found a kind of a burn mark on a tree trunk, which was perfectly symmetrical, a circle, which had been created by a burn. And that's what he sort of talks about, that it could be something that was in the sky. It may not even have come from, it may have been, he doesn't say a military thing, but there's something going on which is kind of technology-based.
Yeah.
And I would go along with that. It's inexplicable, but there seems to be some kind of evidence that's leading towards it, but it can be explained.
Yeah, that's absolutely my own personal thinking of the stuff I've read, that it's something in the sky, a light anomaly of some kind, whether it's a military experiment or I'm not a big fan of otherworldly spacecraft, but it could possibly sort of testing craft that was experimental and wanted to hush that up because it went wrong. That kind of thing certainly seems to, for me, to fit much of this. But again, we have the anomalies of what actually happens to them, certainly. But I shall now be very quiet and let my good friend Kerry have to say what she wants to say.
Thank you, Andy. No, seriously. I want to look at... there was something that really interested me on your website, which was to do with a computer simulation that somebody had done that came up with some very interesting results. Now, this is based around the methanol theory, isn't it?
Yeah.
Do you want to explain a little bit about that?
Well, it's it was Ben Firth. What he was saying was that he'd run computer simulations on all the theories, and that kept coming up with 97% probability. And that's, to me, that's pretty good. I work in computer security, but to me, that's applause. If something comes up 97% hit, you've got to take some attention to it. But the methanol, he's saying that that methanol was introduced into the food source that they were eating, and that is what had affected them. that whoever had done it possibly as a bit of a joke, they realised that somebody had done it. They attacked whoever had if you like, put it into their food, but it was affecting them quite badly, virtually driving them wild. I mean, the theory's on my website, but it implies that one member of the group, though, is doing something to the others. But as I say, it's, if it comes up with 97% possibility, then I think you've got to look at it, because there's a number of theories there that they were possibly eating mushrooms, that they'd had fly algaric, I think it was, but things that would affect their mental faculties, and that would account for the weird, bizarre behaviour of slashing their way out. Whether it's methanol that was making them go wild, if you like, but it also blinds you. I mean, methanol, it's poisoning. It's a toxic substance. So whether you go with the methanol or any other, the fly algaric or whatever, magic mushrooms, call it what you will, that they possibly been experimenting with it, that would account for the weird, bizarre behaviour. And what Ben was saying about the methanol was that they realised that it had been done to them, and that's why they had attacked the person who had done it. What he's saying is that he tried to climb the cedar tree to get away from them, but then they started climbing up after him. But he's saying, I thought it was just alcohol and it'd be harmless, that the water and fuel got mixed up. So if you like, a prank that went wrong.
Very, very wrong indeed.
But it doesn't explain the light anomalies in the sky, or some of the more weirder injuries that some of them got.
Well, what Ben was saying is that again, the fall down the ravine, heavy snow on top of them causes the rib compression and fractures. I don't necessarily know that's true, because I suppose it's possible snow building up on top of you causes the fractures, but I can't imagine the snow would flatten your nose into your head.
That does leave us the same problem, doesn't it, when we're talking about even the military involvement, that things in the sky being military craft or testing weaponry. It's getting down to what physically happened to them. That's the bit that's always the troubling bit, isn't it? Because if you're talking about the idea of it being a military operation, as we were saying before, then you have to have evidence of these people being nearby to have caused the physical injuries. If they were caught in the area and were threatened with suffering, if they didn't keep quiet and they decided, well, no, it's no good, they're not going to keep quiet, we're going to have to kill them. There's no evidence, is there? That's the really troubling bit, isn't it?
But what I would say about that, though, is there's no evidence up by the tent. And don't forget the footsteps that they saw, only they started depending. I mean, there's several variations on where the footsteps started. They didn't start right at the tent. Some people say it's 400 metres, some people say 80 metres, some people say 20 from the rescuers. The footprints started some distance away, and okay, it's only their footprints, but they petered out before they got to the tree line. When you get down to the tree line, I mean, I'm talking about the day they found the tent, there was no footprints at all, so they didn't know what had happened to them. They didn't know where they were. The bodies were all there, but of course they couldn't see them, and there was no footprints. There was no footprints at all around where any of the bodies were found. So something could have happened there.
So is it the snow itself just simply covered them over? Or?
Yeah, well, there was none found, put it that way. Nobody said we found footprints here. What they did was find the bodies, but there was no footprints around them, or there possibly may have been the footprints of the group, but nobody mentions any footprints. It's like the snow covered everything. And of course, what happened was, even if there had been any footprints there, by the time the rescue parties got there, started digging up the bodies, any other footprints are going to be obliterated. There was 5 search parties. They had to bring a large tent in to accommodate everybody. So you got these people traipsing over the whole area. And what this Russian journalist was saying, the one who first started pulling the case apart, was his view was when they talk about the 8 or 9 pairs of footprints going down, he says he doesn't believe it because he said once they found the tent, people were coming in from all directions. A message had gone back saying we found the tent, so everybody gravitates towards it, and they're tramping all over the place. And he thinks that they would have been following the footprints and just walking all over them because, as I say, they didn't think it was like a murder scene or a crime scene. They just think we found them and we'll follow the footprints and they'll be round at the bottom somewhere. Or if they couldn't find them, they'll be nearby. All we've got to do is find them. So there's no real reason for them not to cover up everything. They think, well, we've nearly got them, so there's no need to protect any footprints or anything.
Well, the thought that's kind of just crossed my mind, quite literally, as you were talking about it, is that maybe there was military activity close by that didn't actually involve these guys, the Dyatlov 9 themselves directly, but because it was a sensitive area, they just wanted to keep the whole thing quiet. They're okay, something strange has happened to these guys, but we're not going to worry about that because it's important that this area is people kept clear of it. So it could be that they're almost like covering it up, not because they knew there was a real reason why it happened, but because it was just open too many questions that didn't want to be asked. I didn't want answers for. So they just kind of muddied it all up and said, no, shut it all down now.
Well, that's actually quite plausible. Yeah, I would go along with that, and it would also explain Urakov arriving from Moscow and saying, close it down. And who knows, they'd say, well, fiddle around with the autopsies a bit and make it look muddy, the water, if you like, but shut it down. We don't want any more. And I've got a feeling you could be onto something with that, because there may well have been something going on and that it didn't necessarily directly affect them, but they could see that something that may have harmed them was nearby, and they thought, oh, God, we've got to get away from here. But it didn't directly affect them in that sense, and they died of the cold or whatever. And the military thought, oh, God, because of what we've been doing here, they've all died. But you're not going to make that public.
No. Oh, well, that'll be my next book, I think.
Yeah. Well,
you've got enough to write.
I've just given my whole plot away, haven't I? I can't write my all the way.
I'll tell you, Andy, that's actually worth looking into. That's to me, that's quite plausible.
Oh, that's it. I'm off, definitely.
Yeah. No, it's very plausible. But like I say, I don't know we'll ever get to the bottom of it. The people are starting to die off now. But I believe that there is something in the FSB archives. I'd be surprised if there wasn't. But, the what was the KGB, I find it impossible to believe that they wouldn't have been involved, considering 2 of the group were working with in secret nuclear facilities. Just even the security element of it, they'd have been involved. But they say they were never involved, but that's a stock response.
Have you ever spoken to Svetlana Oss about the case? She's a Russian writer who's written about it.
The trouble is, she's almost competition, if you like. Not that one knows anybody, but she's got her theory. I've got Donny Eicher's got his theory.
Yeah.
Her theory is actually, again, pretty plausible. Yeah, I mean, she's investigated it, but I don't know that I agree with it. But again, it's plausible. But what it needs is somebody to find, I don't know, if you like, a bit of evidence just to take it forward. It needs something to come out of the woodwork, and just so you can start saying, right, well, it is this, and this is the direction it should go in. But until that day comes, I mean, there might be something. There's military archives are held south of, in Podolsk, south of Moscow, but getting in there, I think, to look at, I don't speak Russian, but getting in to look at them, I'd say one of the nearest chances this might have been solved was when Yeltsin was in power.
Yeah.
Because he had been at the same university at them, and he thought, what they were, ski tourism was great. And Yeltsin tried to be open about the biological warfare accident they had in that city as well.
The anthrax one, wasn't it?
Yeah. He was all for pensions being paid to people who'd been affected and all the rest of it. He didn't try to hide it, but Yeltsin's long gone now, sadly. But he when he was in power, there might have been a chance to get to the bottom of it. But the way things are now in Russia, it's heading. Everybody says it's heading back to the old days, unfortunately, as far as the truth or security goes, sadly.
Yeah. I was certainly in the last few months, especially with America, it does almost feel like they're really looking at a Russia going into isolation to try and
it is
everyone out of it, really.
It's quite sad because I actually like the Russians. Obviously I've met everybody in Russia, and I've no doubt there's plenty of nasty people there, but I met one or two rude people, but I find them very basic, down-to-earth people, and if you need help, they'll give it to you. I mean, there was two guys who took me off the mountain after I wrecked my knee. They cut short their trip by a week to get me back to Ekaterinburg. Nearly 17-hour drive. They wouldn't take a penny off me.
That's amazing. I mean, obviously...
Somebody here driving you from Edinburgh to London, on a motorway, let alone all the crap we went through there. And they just wouldn't take anything off me. They insist on paying for a meal on the way back. And I find them very decent, straightforward people.
Yeah, I mean, for what you said before, it sounds like we wouldn't be talking to you now if it hadn't been for those guys.
Yeah.
Well, I was actually frightened, genuinely frightened, because I thought, well, I can't expect anybody to carry me. It's 30 miles to Ushma, which is the Mansy village where the vehicle was. I mean, I wouldn't have been left forever there because I think they would have got some help up to me, but I was going to be on my own for a while there. There's no doubt about it. But and it's dangerous, and there's bears there and all the rest of it. But there seems to be an unwritten code in the mountains, so if you need help, you get it no matter what.
What actually happened to you? I didn't quite catch the exact events.
The thing is, I used to do a lot of powerlifting when I was younger, and my knees are basically wrecked from it. With heavy squatting, and I stopped it years ago, but I've kept myself reasonably fit. But my knees are not in great shape. But the backpacks we had weighed, I think, I won't say it in metric. It's 55 pounds, which is quite heavy. And the trouble is, it's the mud there is absolutely terrible. So after we dropped off the truck, we had the best part of 25 or 30 miles to trek. And the pace they set up was daunting. So you imagine doing that. It's like doing a cross-country run in full kit, if you like.
Oh, Lord,
55 pounds. And I was doing all right. But what happened was the mud was so bad on the trail that I was using a ski pole I'd hold on to vegetation with my left hand, walk around the edge of the mud, use the ski pole over on the right, and get myself across the mud. Because if you went into the mud, it would go up to your middle of your thigh. We were all wearing boots. I mean, my boots were full of mud, and the socks were soaked in mud. But you just didn't care. You just carried on. But what happened was, there was a large pool of mud that I thought was probably only about an inch or two deep, and it was anything but. And the effect of me going so fast swung me. My leg was trapped, if you like, and my whole twisted around at 45 degrees with the weight of my backpack. And so went, but I was still able to continue. But it wasn't a good omen, shall we say. So anyway, we pitched the tent where the cache, where the group had left the cache, and went up and down the mountain a few times, and we'd set up a kind of a campfire with logs around. It was pretty good. And one night I'd just eaten, and I stood up, and it felt like somebody got a red-hot poker and rammed it right into the middle of my knee. I was never known pain like it. And I sat back down. I thought, well, maybe I've just stood up a funny way, but I literally could not put any weight on it. And of course, with barely 2 days to go, I thought, what do I do now? Because that sort of, I couldn't put any weight on it. I couldn't walk. I couldn't, you couldn't even use the ski pole to hobble. And I was literally hobbling. And I thought, well, I'm miles away from anywhere. I can't expect anybody to carry me. I weigh 16.5 stone. So what the hell do you do?
Yeah. Oh, dear.
Well,
pray someone comes past.
Yeah, just hope.
I had to go. I got 2 people that helped me up. Well, there was 3 of them actually. But went up. They said the best thing to do is go up to the memorial stone, and there were people passing by, but I had to sit by the memorial stone, and I mean, it was there for hours and hours and hours, but I could have been there for weeks. Because all the what they said was the forestry. One guy that came along said, "I'm going north into the polar Urals on these giant quad bikes." He said, "If you're still here, I'll pick you up on the way back." And I thought in a couple of hours, but he said, "I'll be back in about 10 days." And all I had was a bag of peanuts and a bottle of water. So I thought, well, I better get more peanuts because I'm going to be in for a bit of a wait. It wasn't. I was actually quite worried. It wasn't because I thought I'm literally helpless.
Yeah.
And if I'd been on my own, I mean, when we were driving through because after they picked me up, I mean, they had a real built for all the muck, it was going into huge potholes and going through deep mud. It was a 4-wheel drive with several sets of gears. It was built for it, but we were making slow progress. But we would come across people on their own, not Mansy, but like trekkers. One guy had a tent on his back, and he was just hiking on his own. I mean, no way would I do that there, because the people that were taking me, they'd stop and ask, do you need any help, or are you okay? And they'd always say, yeah, I'm fine, or whatever. We saw a couple of Mansy women, and we spoke to them, but they were very not suspicious, but they were wary. They stood well back from us, but no way would I go through an area. I actually had somebody, a lady, I'm not going to name her, but she said, I regularly go on hiking expeditions in the UK, and I'd like to go through the Urals on my own. What do you recommend? And I said, well, I said I would not recommend. She didn't speak any Russian either, but I said I wouldn't recommend going up there on your own at all if you've never been there before. And I said to her what had happened to me. I said, if something happens to you, I said, there's massive bears up there. One person on her own who doesn't speak the language, and say she broke her ankle, and you can't get a satellite signal there.
No.
So you're as good as finished.
You really are isolated, aren't you? God.
On that kind of note, I'm really sorry, but we are coming to the end of the show. But before we disappear, I just wanted a quick, because you're working on a new interesting case about a lighthouse at the moment, aren't you, Keith?
Yeah, well, I've done it. It's the Flannan Isles, the disappearance of the 3 lighthousemen. I've actually, we were up there filming with the Discovery Channel a couple of years back. I mean, my book's out. It's called The Lighthouse, but that's a fascinating case as well.
Would you come back and tell us all about that on another show?
Absolutely, yeah. It's not as convoluted a tale as the Dyatlov story, but it's a strange one because, again, everybody, like with Dyatlov, everybody says it's obviously an avalanche, which it isn't. And everybody says the disappearance of these 3 men was a giant wave, which we don't believe it was, because I've spoken to a number of lighthouse keepers, because it's a profession the profession itself is dead now, because all lighthouses are automated.
Yeah.
But I've spoken to both of the last 2 remaining alive men who were on the Flannans, and I've had a lot of help from another keeper who'd worked with the Northern Lighthouse Board. He wasn't on the Flannans, but he was on several others, and between us, especially him, Alistair Henderson, he's come up with some excellent theories on it, and it's not a giant wave, I don't believe at all.
We'll save that for the new.
Yeah.
We'll save that for the next show we do with you, if that's okay, because you really do have to wrap it up tonight. I'd like to thank you so much for joining us. It's been absolutely fascinating. So thank you for joining us.
Yep. Thank you very much.
And thank you, Andy, because you've been very
Yes.
helpful tonight as well.
Oh, thank you.
thanks, Andy.
That's great. I absolutely love this. I was really hoping to have a good conversation about this. I could go on for hours more, but I know they're not going to be very happy with me because I tend to talk and talk and talk. So I need to stop.
Okay. I'd like to thank everybody in the chat room for joining us. So thank you for that. I hope you enjoyed tonight. Spread the word if you did, because it goes to a podcast afterwards. We're also on the Podbean. We're also on the Internet Archive. We're also on YouTube. In fact, we're just about everywhere at the moment. So please spread the word. Thank you so much for joining us. And we'll be back with our weekly shows on Tuesday, I think. I think it's Tuesday. So take care, everybody. Say good night, lads.
Good night.
Good night, lads.
Good night.
Good night.
You're listening to Parasearch UK Radio. News, views and reviews from the world of the paranormal from across the UK and beyond. Find us on Facebook, Twitter and the World Wide Web. Parasearch UK Radio.